She abandoned the company the moment it needed her most. My brother didn't even look at me when he said it. He was addressing the mediator, his voice smooth and practiced, like he'd been rehearsing in front of a mirror for weeks. Maybe he had. He adjusted his cufflinks, the ones my mother had given him for his 40th birthday, and shook his head slowly, performing grief for an audience of 3. I didn't flinch. I didn't correct him. I looked down at my phone and checked the time. 11 minutes. That was how long before everything he'd spent 2 years building would come apart in this room. Have you ever sat across from someone who was lying about you so completely, so confidently, that for 1 second you almost believed them yourself? Drop a yes in the comments if you know what that silence feels like. I want to know how many of us have been in that chair. My brother, let's call him what he was in that room. My opponent sat with his lawyer to his left and a thick accordion folder on the table in front of him. The folder was the centerpiece of his performance. He kept touching it, patting it like it was a winning hand he couldn't wait to show. The mediator, a compact woman named Miss Okafor, looked at me over her reading glasses. She had the expression of someone who had heard every family tragedy imaginable and had stopped being surprised by any of them. Maya, she said, your brother has filed a formal petition to have you removed as executor of your mother's estate and to appoint himself as sole trustee. He's also requesting a full audit of all transactions made in the past 18 months. Do you understand the scope of what's being requested today? I understood the scope perfectly. What my brother didn't understand was that I had designed the scope myself. I nodded once. I understand. My brother exhaled through his nose, that particular exhale, the one I'd been hearing since childhood, the one that said you're embarrassing yourself and you don't even know it. He'd used it the first time when I was 9 and got a science question wrong at dinner. He'd used it the last time 3 days before our mother's funeral, when I told him I needed a week before making any decisions about the estate. A week, he'd repeated, with that exhale. Of course you do. He was 8 years older than me. He had an MBA, a firm handshake, and the absolute certainty that being in a room first meant you owned it. Our mother had built a regional logistics company from a single rented truck and 20 years of 7-day work weeks. When she died 18 months ago, she left the company valued at just over $4 million in a trust, with me as executor and both of us as equal beneficiaries. My brother received that information with the same exhale, slightly longer that time. Miss Okafor folded her hands. We'll begin with your brother's petition. He may present his evidence. My brother's lawyer, a man named Gerald, who had the energy of someone who billed by the syllable, opened the accordion folder. He slid a set of documents across the table toward Miss Okafor. We're presenting a pattern of financial mismanagement, Gerald said, his voice carrying the practiced gravity of someone reading a verdict he'd already written. Specifically, we're documenting 31 irregular transactions totaling approximately $620,000 made from the estate's operating account over the past 14 months. These funds were moved to accounts outside the trust structure, without board notification, without beneficiary consent, and in direct violation of the fiduciary duties assigned to the executor. My brother turned to look at me for the first time. His eyes were steady. He wanted to see panic. He'd been looking for panic in my face for 18 months and finding nothing, and it had been making him increasingly reckless. She has been draining the estate, my brother said, abandoning Gerald's measured tone for something more theatrical. While I have been managing client relationships, keeping our mother's employees paid, holding this company together, she has been systematically moving money out. She lives in a studio apartment. She drives a 7-year-old Civic. She hasn't taken a salary from the company. So where did $620,000 go? I'll tell you where. Into accounts she controls privately. Accounts she's hidden from this process. Miss Okafor looked at the documents. She looked at me. Maya, these are serious allegations. Do you want to respond? I want to tell you something about the year before my mother died. She called me on a Tuesday morning in October, which was unusual because she never called before noon. She was a morning worker, silent and focused until lunch. I answered, and she said, without grating, I need you to come to the office. Not this week. Today. I drove 2 hours. When I arrived, she was sitting behind her desk with a single manila folder in front of her and an expression I had never seen on her face before. It took me a moment to identify it. It was fear. She slid the folder across the desk to me. Inside were bank statements, company accounts I didn't have visibility into at the time, with a series of transfers highlighted in yellow. Your brother has been moving money, she said. I noticed it 3 months ago. I've been watching. The transfers were small at first. 12,000 here, 8,000 there. Routed through a vendor account, My brother had set up 18 months prior a logistics subcontractor called Meridian Transit Solutions. I later confirmed that Meridian Transit Solutions had no trucks, no employees, no physical address, and had been incorporated in Delaware using a P.O. box and the name of my brother's college roommate. My mother looked at me across the desk and said, "I don't want to go to the police. Not yet. I want to know how deep it goes." So we built a trap together. I didn't respond immediately in the mediation room. I let Gerald finish. I let my brother add 2 more sentences about my pattern of evasion and my suspicious lifestyle choices. Then I looked at Miss Okafor and said evenly, "Everything he just described is accurate. The transactions happened. The money moved. I authorized every single one of them." My brother sat back in his chair like I had just confirmed everything he'd ever suspected about me. Gerald stopped writing mid-sentence. "However," I said, "I didn't move that money into hidden accounts. I moved it into evidence." I opened my bag and placed a single dark blue binder on the table. Not thick, deliberate. I had learned from watching my mother that the most powerful documents don't need to be heavy. They just need to be right. Before I get to what's in here, I said, I want to address something my brother said, because I think the people in this room deserve to understand why I lived the way I lived for the past 18 months. I looked at Miss Okafor, not at my brother. He mentioned my apartment, my car, the fact that I didn't take a salary. He presented those as evidence of incompetence. He suggested the money I removed from the estate was funding a private life I was hiding. I paused. I'd like to offer a different explanation. I told the room what I had not told anyone outside of 2 people for a year and a half. My mother had come to me with evidence of irregular transfers, initial estimate, somewhere between $80,000 and $120,000. We didn't know how far it went yet. She had asked me to take over management of the estate when she was gone, which she knew she would be, because the diagnosis had come 6 weeks before that October phone call. Pancreatic, stage 3. She had 8 months, give or take. She said, "I need you to be boring. I need you to be forgettable. I need him to think he's the only one who knows what's happening." So I became boring. I moved into a studio apartment. I took the bus. I wore the same rotation of 7 outfits. I declined every invitation to the company Christmas party, both board dinners and a client golf event my brother specifically told me I needed to attend for optics. I let him believe I was overwhelmed by grief, paralyzed by responsibility, quietly failing at a job too big for me. I let him breathe easy. And while he breathed easy, I followed the money. "Miss Okafor," I said, sliding the blue binder across the table. "What you're looking at is 14 months of forensic documentation. Every transaction my brother flagged as suspicious was made by me, deliberately, for the following reason. Each one was a withdrawal designed to trace the full routing path of funds moving through Meridian Transit Solutions, a shell company my brother incorporated 26 months ago, 11 months before our mother's diagnosis." Gerald looked at the binder. He had gone very still. My brother said, "That's fabricated." "The $620,000 I moved," I continued, addressing Miss Okafor directly, "was not moved to private accounts. It was moved into a series of monitored holding accounts set up in coordination with a forensic accounting firm Harlow & Park, whose lead partner's contact information is on page 1 of that binder, specifically to establish a documented chain of custody for funds that were being simultaneously siphoned by Meridian Transit." I turned 1 page. "Over the 14 months I've been executor, my brother routed approximately $1.1 million in company revenue through Meridian. The $620,000 I moved was a tracking mechanism. The actual theft is more than twice that amount." The room had a specific quality of silence that I had only experienced once before in the hospital, in the 3 seconds between a monitor flatlining and the nurse reaching the door. It was the silence of something ending. My brother's composure cracked. Not shattered, cracked, the way expensive things crack, in a single clean line. "She's lying," he said to Gerald, to Miss Okafor, to the room. "She's been building this story for months. She's obsessed with punishing me for being the one who actually ran that company while she played executor from her little apartment." Gerald put a hand on his arm. My brother shook it off. "You want to talk about who ran that company?" my brother said, his voice rising now. "I was there every morning at 7. I handled the Callaway contract, the merger conversation with Pacific Freight, the union negotiation last spring. She showed up to sign documents and disappear. Mom always protected her because she was the youngest, because she was fragile, because she needed—" "Our mother knew," I said. "Quiet." "She came to me," I said, "because she had already found the Meridian account. She had already noticed the pattern. She didn't go to you, And she didn't go to an attorney, and she didn't go to the board. She came to me with a folder. In October, 10 months before she died, I held my brother's eyes. I had not looked directly at him since we sat down. She asked me to document everything, to wait, to let the number get big enough that there was no ambiguity, no family dispute. No, I borrowed it and forgot to record it. She wanted a number that required a federal referral. My brother was breathing differently now. I recognized the shift. It was the same shift I had watched in the security footage from his office, which was also in the binder, along with the access logs showing him logging into the company's vendor payment portal from his personal laptop, at home, at 11 p.m., 17 times in the past year. But a cornered person is not a defeated person. My brother had survived 48 years by adapting quickly. He reached into his jacket pocket, a gesture so similar to a scene I had read about in courtroom cases that it almost felt scripted, and produced a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it slowly, set it on the table. She's been building a case, he said, his voice recovering some steadiness. Fine. I built one too. He looked at Miss Okafor. This is an email, sent from my mother's personal account, dated 4 months before her death. In it, she explicitly authorizes me to manage Meridian Transit Solutions on behalf of the family trust, to consolidate logistics operations, and to transfer funds as needed to streamline vendor relationships. He slid it across the table. She knew about Meridian. She approved it. This is my mother, in writing, giving me full authorization, which means every dollar that moved through that account was legally sanctioned by the trust's founder. Miss Okafor read the email. She looked at me. The room shifted again. I saw Gerald's posture change, a subtle straightening, the body language of a man who had just found something to hold on to. I want to be honest with you about this moment, because I think it's the part stories like mine usually skip over. I was not calm. Underneath the surface of everything I had constructed, the binder, the documentation, the forensic accountants, the 14 months of careful silence, I felt something cold and sharp move through my chest. Not panic, something worse, doubt. Because I had not seen that email before, and for approximately 4 seconds, I sat with the possibility that my brother had actually found something I missed. 4 seconds. Then I thought about October, about my mother sitting behind her desk with her folder and her highlighted statements and her face that I had never seen afraid before and have never seen since. About what she said at the end of that conversation before I drove the 2 hours home. He's going to have something. He always does. He's been doing this since he was 12 years old. He keeps an exit. You find the exit before he does. I opened the blue binder to the last tab. I had labeled it simply, Exit. May I see the email? I said to Miss Okafor. She passed it across. I looked at it, read it once, looked at the header, looked at the metadata printed in the footer because my mother, a woman who had been running a logistics company for 2 decades, always printed emails with full metadata display enabled. It was a habit. She'd explained it to me once. If it matters enough to print, it matters enough to show when it was sent and from where. The metadata showed the email had been sent at 6:14 a.m. on a Thursday in February from my mother's account. From an IP address, I recognized from the forensic report in the binder because that IP address was the same one that had been used to access the company vendor portal from my brother's home office. I looked up. This email was sent from your home network, I said. Page 47 of the binder contains the IP log cross-reference. The same address that made 11 of the 17 unauthorized vendor portal logins also sent this email at 6 in the morning from my mother's account. She was in the hospital that week. She had been admitted 4 days earlier for pain management. I have her admission and discharge records behind tab 9. My brother's face did something I had no word for. It collapsed inward, not dramatically, quietly, like a building where someone has removed a single load-bearing wall and the rest of the structure takes a moment to realize it. Gerald closed his notepad. You accessed her email, I said. You wrote to yourself from her account. You printed it, aged it in a drawer somewhere, and brought it here today because you needed an exit. I set the email back on the table between us. Mom told me you'd have one. She was right. She was always right about you. She just loved you too much to say it out loud to anyone else. I did not enjoy that moment. I want to be clear about that because I think people sometimes expect this part of the story to feel triumphant. It didn't. My brother was not a cartoon. He was a person I had grown up with, who had taught me to ride a bike in a parking lot on a Saturday morning when I was 6, who had called me from his car when my first serious relationship ended because he somehow knew before I told anyone. Somewhere between that person in this room He had made a series of choices that I couldn't follow him into. That was grief too, just a different shape of it. Miss Okafor set down her pen. She looked at the binder, she looked at the email, she looked at my brother, with the expression of someone who was no longer mediating and knew it. Mister, she began. I know, my brother said. His voice was flat. All the performance had left it. I know. Gerald was already closing his accordion folder. What happened in the 2 weeks after that mediation is less dramatic than the room itself, but I'll tell you anyway because I think the aftermath is the part nobody talks about. My brother did not contest the referral. The forensic accounting firm filed their report with the state attorney's office. A federal financial crimes unit picked it up 6 days later because of the interstate routing through the Delaware Shell Company. I was told the process would take time federal cases do. I wasn't waiting for a verdict. I had already gotten what I came for. My mother's company did not collapse. Her operations director, a woman named Renata, who had been there since year 3 and knew the freight routes better than anyone alive, stepped into an interim management role while the board restructured. I signed the paperwork to retain Renata on a permanent contract on a Tuesday afternoon sitting in my studio apartment on my 7-year-old laptop drinking gas station coffee. My mother would have found that funny. She drank terrible coffee her whole life. She said if you needed the coffee to be good, you were thinking about the wrong things. I sold the studio apartment lease the following month, not because I had to, because I was done being invisible. I am telling you this story not because I want you to think I am someone who had everything figured out. I made mistakes. I signed documents without reading them when I was 24 and grieving and exhausted, and those mistakes created openings. I missed things. I had 4 seconds of doubt in a mediation room that could have broken everything if the doubt had lasted 5. I cried in my car in the parking garage of a forensic accounting office at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night because I was 31 years old and my mother was gone, and the person who should have been grieving beside me was the person I was building a case against. But I also want to tell you this. My mother did not come to me in October because I was the youngest. She did not come to me because I was fragile, the way my brother had spent years suggesting. She came to me because she trusted me, because she knew that if she handed me something hard and asked me to hold it quietly for as long as it took, I would not put it down. There is something they don't tell you about patience. It isn't passive. It is the most active thing I have ever done. Every morning for 14 months I woke up, went through the numbers, checked the routing logs, verified the holding accounts, and did not say a word to the person across from me at every family dinner and board meeting and estate review who was waiting for me to either explode or give up. Patience is not waiting. Patience is building while they think you're standing still. If someone in your life is counting on your silence to protect their secrets, let them count. Keep building. Keep the folder. Keep the metadata. Keep the exit tab. And when the time comes, and it will come open the binder slowly, you don't need to rush. The ending is already written. They just don't know yet that you're the one who wrote it.